Welcome to Innovator Insights, where we explore the minds shaping the future of tomorrow's leaders. In this episode, Scott sits down with Dr. Matthew Joseph, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and CEO of X Factor Edu Consulting and Publishing. We'll hear his insights on empowering students, the challenges schools face in fostering a culture of creativity, and a need for a shift in mindset among educators. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Innovator Insights. I'm Scott Fisher. Today I'm in New York. My guest today is Dr. Matthew Joseph. He's the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning in New Bedford, Massachusetts. He's also the CEO of X Factor Edu Consulting and Publishing. Welcome, Dr. Joseph. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here and to have a conversation about one of the things I really am passionate about.
Well, I appreciate you being here. So now, most people likely have a general understanding of what an assistant superintendent is.
Sure.
But is there anything unique about how your position specifically relates to teaching and learning?
Absolutely. And I think it comes from the vision of our superintendent and kind of my background and my kind of path into this world essentially was being an elementary school teacher and then an elementary school principal for 10 years. So very rooted in the instructional base. And through that time, I was just very fortunate to work closely with Apple and launch one of the first one-to-one initiatives in Massachusetts when I was in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And from that, when I became a principal, it was something that I took with me and worked with Apple and brought innovation into elementary schools. And this was back in 2006 when I started. So for 10 years, I had that opportunity to mix bringing technology and innovation when it was really starting to get a footprint in the elementary schools or really K-12 in general. And then after 10 years in 2016, after I finished Boston College, I went into the district level. And one of the things I really wanted to do was bring that same innovation and passion. And at the time, assistant superintendent of teaching and learning or curriculum was very curriculum focused. And I wanted to stay on the innovation side. So I was the director of innovation for a few years. And then over time, I saw how that could blend together and, work I started to do in both Brockton, Massachusetts and Providence around executive director of teaching and learning. Was work that really was interesting. And then when I came here to New Bedford, I actually came as assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. And in meeting with my superintendent, I wanted to keep that innovation. I wanted to keep that really passion for new way of teaching and learning and tools, and that molded into assistant superintendent of technology and learning. And through that, I oversee our technology department, our initiatives, kind of the work we do with innovation. And I also supervise principals to allow to be in schools and work closely with teaching and learning at the level of point of contact for students. So I think it's kind of unique that to have someone in a technology leadership capacity that's been a former principal, who's been an instructional leader and still has a foot in that world and both in district and some of the work I do outside.
Yeah, it's a very interesting role that you've created there. It is unique in its design. So that's interesting. So can you tell me though a little bit about also what X Factor is? X Factor Edu, I believe it is.
Yes, it is. So at that time when I was just sharing, I was principal and mixing that technology and innovation into school leadership. It was an opportunity to share and in state levels and eventually national levels. School districts and events were interested in hearing that transition. So I started to do some consulting and speaking. And through that time, I started an LLC, X Factor Edu, for myself, really just so that I could have that separation from both my day job and doing that consulting. And I started to do my own work and meeting so many people in the field through different events and through different engagements across the country. People are interested in kind of joining and publishing. And it turned into publishing books and then turned into professional development. So we have about 20 authors, about 35 publications out there, from educational technology to leadership to mentoring. And we've just started publishing in the last year children's books focused on, technology and learning, focused on, empathy. So the biggest thing with X Factor is that it's practitioners sharing their voices around practical strategies. It's not researchers. It's not people who do this full time. It's second grade teachers. It's principals. It's curriculum directors. It's individuals who are in the field. And that's important. And that's really been our brand, that people that we have 4 books coming out this fall, and all of them are in the field. And they're people who do the work that they write about. And that's been our real drive, is to produce content from people doing the content.
Yeah, the boots on the ground kind of folks. That's great.
Mhm.
Okay. So now, how has your experience as an administrator shaped your approach to innovation in schools?
Because for me, being in schools is critical. Visible leadership is very important to me. And if I'm in schools and I'm in classrooms, I see it come to life. And when I see students discovering learning and I see them excited, that's when it really changes. And for me, it drives me to find what that next thing is, and then have our students try it. I'm a fail forward kind of person, where we try a lot of things and see what is working to build off of it. So for me, I think shaping that lens is being in schools. It's running professional development. I love to deliver professional development for our staff, for our students, for our leaders, because I get better, and 2, we get to share what's working.
Okay. So now you've worked in various roles. Is there a specific example of maybe a time when you saw a need for innovation and you were able to successfully implement that new idea?
Well, yes, and I wouldn't say it was even from my roles. I had to, I have a nephew who was entering kindergarten, and I took him to Kohl's, and I remember this specifically, which is a store to buy shoes or other things, clothes and different things. And I lost him in the store. And I was like, oh my gosh, where is he? And then I knew I was going to bring he had to buy sneakers. And next thing I know, somebody walks out with sneakers. So I followed the salesperson over to him, and he sat down, and there he was. There was my nephew. And I said, what's going on? And he just pointed. Now, he's in college now. So this is how long ago that was. He
Okay.
pointed to this big kiosk, this huge iPad. And a 5-year-old walked over, touched the sneakers he liked, touched the size he had. And the next thing I knew, sneakers came out from the back room for the salesperson. So I went to school the
At
next
5.
day. Yeah, at 5. So I went to school the next day as a principal, and I said, we really need to change how we are empowering our students. And through that, and that was in the early 2000s, we started to raise money. We had a fundraiser through a golf event, through different fundraisings, and we bought at the time smart boards, and then we bought laptop carts, and we started to bring that innovation in schools. And I started to get some notoriety for doing that.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I really saw that we can empower our students to take risks in their learning, and we as educators can also come out learning something.
Wow. That's I'm still on the part that he was 5 years old when this happened, and
Oh,
his
yeah.
ability to do this on his own. So that's what I'm still
When you
playing
put an
back in my head.
iPad or something in front of
Sure.
elementary students, and they're going to figure it out. They're not afraid to try something, and they're going to continue at it until they reach their goal. And I think that's a big learning mind shift for our educators.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so now your work with X Factor EDU is all about empowering educators. So what's the
Yes.
biggest challenge you see schools facing today when it comes to fostering innovation from within?
I think just building off of what we talked about last time is that mindset that our students can do it,
Right.
that by empowering them and actually stepping back is going to allow them to learn. We too often want to teach students what to think instead of how to think.
Yes.
And getting that critical thinking is important. And I think moving the onus of discovery learning to our students and getting away from the keepers of knowledge is where that innovation comes from. We look at what the students are doing now, and when they leave school is when they start their innovation, either through gaming or through creating their own podcasts or doing things. And when they come to school, they're more in kind of a box, because our educators need to have that mindset of discovery learning for students.
Yeah, they absolutely do. The approach to education has to change with the times, of course, and yet you have to meet the students where they're most
Yeah.
comfortable, So now, how do you identify and nurture the X factor in the educators and leaders that you work with?
I think it's a feeling of, one, enjoyment. For people who enjoy what we do, we're
That's
passionate about
important.
what we do. So it's authentic. I think we're just a very authentic team of educators. And because it's so driven by the individuals who write, who publish, who speak, and it's about the content they live and breathe every day when they present or when they talk about their work on a podcast or when they share their book, it's their work. So I think
Right.
that the X factor, it really comes from my middle name is Xavier, and it was my grandfather's middle name as well. So, but what it is now really the outward piece of that is we just are very authentic in what we do and talk about the things that we do, and we stay within our scope of it. So is very welcomed by other educators or other leaders.
Right. And the whole idea of X Factor was great marketing on your side of things. I mean, it's, lots of images come to mind when you hear X
Sure,
Factor.
sure.
So it works really well for you. So good for you. So now,
Thank you.
as a public speaker, you get to share your ideas with a wider audience. So what's the most common misconception that you encounter about innovation in education?
Gosh, there's a few, but the one that I come back to a lot and talk about a lot is that innovation is a thing. It's a computer or it's an iPad or it's a insert example of a physical thing where I try to shape innovative thinking. And
Uh-huh.
because if we can start thinking differently, because it doesn't always have to be a thing. Innovation is doing something more efficient and
Yes.
to push the envelope of somebody's thinking. So it doesn't always have to be a physical thing or an app or a tool. It's just about thinking differently. And, one of the answers I almost gave above about one of the first things I saw is when I was a principal, again, back in 2006, we used to we used to do our morning announcements every day over the loudspeaker. And I had a grandmother call me and ask, can I come and, listen to my granddaughter do the announcements? I'm like, yeah, come on in. And she says, well, we live in Florida and I'm in Massachusetts. And I was like, well, you can't, I don't
A
know how
little
we're
bit of
going
a
to do.
challenge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know how we're going to do that. So a lot of times in our field, we stop right there. It's a roadblock. And for me, it was a speed bump. So because, as I shared earlier, I worked with Apple, I worked with them to get a podcasting station, and we started to podcast our morning announcements every day in 2006. And it was about that thinking differently that, yeah, this can happen. And we made it work. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. It has to be a thing, that innovation is a way of thinking.
Yeah, well, now you're reminding me. I guess I missed an opportunity. So, as my
Sure.
role as a former tech director, I can recall having board members and community members ask me if they could somehow gain access to the communications boards, which are essentially just TVs that we had messages
Right.
running on. They wanted to be able to somehow, from their home or wherever they were, see what we were running on those boards, which is similar to what you're saying. They want to
Right.
know what's going on in the school. And that comes back to, simply the kids not communicating. Your child comes home, you say, how was your day? Fine. What'd you do today? Nothing. That's all you get out of the kids. So I think they want to be more involved without, pushing their student too far to get the information. So you had an excellent solution. Does that podcast still exist, or is that still the method that's being
Um,
used today?
no. And again, I know this wasn't the question, but it was one of the things I really took away from my first principalship and kind of what drives me now, and really the heart of X Factor is empowering others, is that we did some amazing, if I say so myself, things at that first school at Hill Roberts, where we podcasted our morning announcements. We had the innovation, the carts in school. But when I left, it left with me. And I never
Yeah.
empowered other people. And it was my first real leadership role. And I was very excited and I wanted things to work. So I took the lead on everything. And I didn't learn, again, I was about 34. I was much younger in my first experience, that the real power is empowering other people. And it's one of my biggest regrets as a leader, but it's also fueled me in my next
Right.
stops. And even in the work that we do with X Factor. And that's why I want to empower our writers. I want to empower our individuals, because I don't want the innovation to leave because one person leaves. Again, it's an idea, it's a mindset, it's not a thing or a person.
Yeah, that's really important. It's unfortunate that the hard work you put in and the great work that was done while you were there came to an end when you left. So you're absolutely right. It's important to empower the others around you to make sure that it carries on. So now, you're involved with a few different podcasts. So what's one of the
Yes.
most surprising or valuable insights that you've gained from an innovator that you've interviewed?
That I don't know everything. And I didn't think I did when I started, that's for sure. But I've really shifted my thinking with some of the podcasts that I've done. Stronger Together podcast is really comes from the book that I wrote, Stronger Together, around collaboration. Again, what I just said, empowering us as a group, is that I started it to promote other people, to say, I want to help you get your voice out there. Again, a lot of things I do is based in that from what I just shared with you, because I want to empower other people. But what I ended up gaining from that is it was professional development for me. Every week when I learned something from somebody else, and doing that, and now doing the Smile Factor podcast as well with my great friend Lori Guillen, we just learn from other people and talking through ideas, and sharing, and that power of us is so important. And I know that's not really surprising or valuable, but I mean, it's valuable, but as far
Right.
as what I've gained, because knowing and doing are very different in our profession. We know we should do certain things, but we don't always do it. So I
Right.
think the biggest insight would be for me to open my mind of how much I can learn from other people, and leave that bravado aside, that I have to know everything. I have to learn everything. And I work, oversee our technology department. I don't know most of the work that some of our team does, and coding and running our networks, but it's about that team spirit, and collaborative work that makes it a success.
Right. But it's not, I mean, you need to have a good understanding of the processes and how things work. But
Sure.
that's the reason you hire people, so that they have their expertise and you have yours. You shouldn't be expected to write the code.
Right,
That
right.
doesn't mean you can't, certainly manage the team of people and keep them doing their job
I
properly and
agree.
successfully. So
Yes.
now, yeah, obviously we talked about multiple roles that you
Yes.
you have, and you must interact with many different people. So is there a single most important characteristic of a true innovator in your mind?
Yeah, and yeah, I've had a lot of roles from being a principal to curriculum director, director of innovation, teaching and learning, and now in this current role. I think if I had to boil, and that's a whole podcast within itself, and I think the biggest thing for me, I would say, to answer this, is to have an open mind, and the reason is I talk about this a lot, is to really talk about, well, what if? Like, what if we try this? Well, what if we insert this initiative? Well, what if we run professional development this way? And to be allowed to have that really like startup CEO thinking, where you try some different things, and work to build the best solution, not to have the right answer right away. And I think having that open mind, kind of sprinkled in with some risk taking as well, is where the real innovation happens. It's the closed thinking that stifles innovation, the closed thinking that stops growth. And
Right.
I've often found sometimes closed thinking is insecurity, is that
Okay.
it's hard to have an open mind and to take risks if it's outside of your comfort level. And I did that as well early in my career, both as a leader and as a public speaker. I played the role of those things. So I only spoke about things I absolutely knew I could talk about. I didn't take a lot of questions, because if it wasn't within that scope, I didn't know enough to answer outside of my knowledge base. But it wasn't until I became that authentic of like, yeah, I don't know that, but I know who I can connect you with, that it
Yeah.
really allowed that innovation to happen. And then it always surprises me, and it shouldn't, but what others bring to a table. Like, what are we bringing? And it just takes that kind of feeling of, you can contribute. This is a safe space that allows it. So I think having an open mind with a sprinkling of risk taking, is for me the characteristics of a true innovator.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think oftentimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. So I think or unexpected people. So I think it's really, really important to have that open mind, as you talk about there. So now you're using social media a lot. It's a big part of your
Yeah.
platform. How do you leverage it to both share your own innovative ideas and continue to learn from others?
This is a tough balance, because there's this fine line between sharing and bragging. And I think it's and I've danced on both sides, sometimes unintentionally, because I want to share. I'm proud of the work that we do.
Of
And I
course.
think, so I leverage it by posting it. I used to post a lot more, but it started to become white noise, and I didn't want that to happen. So really strategically sharing things, not just on social media, but also through newsletters, through podcasts, through kind of short video snippets, and really, instead of saying, here, read this article I wrote, or here, check out my book, is really taking almost a reels approach, like those short snippet
Mhm.
ideas. And that's why, the USA Today is the most popular newspaper, because it's
Absolutely.
short articles, colorful, is to take short snippets, to put it out and see who's interested. And if people are interested, they typically follow up.
Yes.
So I think to really dive into how I'm leveraging it is to have small sample sizes of, here's some options if you're interested in learning more, not throwing everything out there and say, look at this, read this, here's
Right.
something for you, because I've learned it turns people off, or it comes off incredibly self-serving.
Yeah. That's the last thing you want to happen, is to discourage them from actually investigating or following up on what it is that you're presenting or providing.
Yes.
So, do you handle your social media stuff yourself? Do you automate that somehow using a tool or a person? How do you handle that?
I do it myself, and it's part of my kind of weekend routine. I do plan it out a little bit. I used to have posting tools. I used to have automation, but it felt a little robotic to me. Again,
Right.
this was in that time where I was flooding the market with things. And I learned during that time it was too much. Or if I planned too far ahead, I forgot I posted something, or something was scheduled, and
Yeah.
I posted two or three things that were very similar. And it was like,
Related.
well,
Yeah.
we don't need three of the same things in 2 day span. So I
Right. But
did
that
that for a while.
must mean it was a really good idea, right? If you
I
had the
really was
idea
proud
more
of it.
than once,
Again,
right? Yeah.
it's definitely one of my, I would say, positive faults. I don't know if that's an oxymoron, that I'm so proud of the work and so excited to share it, that sometimes it came across like too many. So I think
Right.
now I do it more in short spans, and schedule it in my calendar for me to do it, not schedule it to go
To
out.
run automatically, right?
Yeah, because again, I would schedule things for months out, and by the time that came on, there was something better. And I found although it seemed like I was being efficient and being hardworking, it was almost lazy, where I wasn't putting the content in the reader first. I was putting myself first.
Right. Interesting approach. So you backed off the automation a little bit, and
Yeah.
might be a little bit more work for you, but it feels a little bit more authentic for you.
Yeah. And I feel like it gives it, I can see what else other people are posting. So it's not one more thing about mentoring or one more thing about
That's a
AI. So
that's a good point, right? If you've prepared stuff to post weeks in advance and different things transact during that time period, you're right. It might be overkill with, somebody else has already talked about the topic, or something has changed. I mean, especially with technology, the rapid change and the way things happen so quickly, it's hard to prepare so far in advance and be timely.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So, given your experience, is there any advice that you'd give to a school leader who wants to create a culture of innovation but doesn't know where to begin?
Yeah, I think one, just to listen. Sometimes I talk first because I'm so excited about something, but I'm not listening to possible, speed bumps along the way, because I'm just really excited about it. I know that's not necessarily advice, but I would say I would start by listening, and then starting small. And I've learned that the power of word of mouth is more impactful than the power of results. So what I mean by that is, I'll use some of my earlier things in innovation. Again, we're talking early 2000s, when we started to work with teachers about having websites, and not everybody wanted one. And I was very upset. And I was, as a principal, like, you should have this. And I was forcing my ideas on other people, and I was frustrated, and it was
Right.
it was a me problem. So when I backed off and made it who would like to learn how to create a website, and two or three teachers did, And then their peers would see that and say, oh, I'd like to try that. And then I would work with those teachers. And then it became more organic. So I think,
Positive peer pressure.
yeah, starting small and getting a sample size of something that works from the people who are doing it is my advice to start. Even if you have the greatest idea, if you're fabulous at some skill and you're like, everyone should do this, I've learned that having a small skill set of individuals who support it when you're not in the room, that's where the impact happens.
Very much so. Yeah. Especially my experience has been with teachers in particular. They really value the work their colleagues are doing. And if
Yes.
one teacher has found success with something, they're going to take to that advice from the teacher much more than they are from the administrator, even if it's the same exact advice. That's
Yeah,
at
I
least
agree.
been my experience. All right. So taking a look at recent technology innovation, is there something that you believe has the potential to truly transform the classroom experience for students?
Yeah, I think I hesitate because if I share like a tool or something in a year, it could be gone.
Right.
So I think where I see the biggest transformation is on memorializing student work. So either through technology that allows for portfolios or allows for student work like a YouTube type. I don't think YouTube will be gone in a year, but I'm saying that type of work where students can memorialize their work and they can almost make a trajectory of here's what I did in my early years in education. Here's what I've done in my middle years. Here's where I'm at when I'm in high school. Because where I feel like the higher ed and workforce is going is on experiential learning more than results-based testing. And having memorialized work is going to benefit our students in their learning experiences better because students look what's out there. They love sharing their work or they love sharing their voice. And if we allow for platforms that empower students to memorialize their work, we have a little bit more, not control in a bad way, but control from an educator lens of like, all right, I see what you're sharing. Let's try to add some more perspective on that. Let's try to add some more research on that. And our educators can add the teaching moments in there as well, and not just a repository of random thoughts at, midnight.
Sure. I mean, but even from just a practical point of view, the student portfolio I've always thought was a great idea because when it comes time for graduation, applying to colleges, going
Sure.
out to the workforce, or even before that when they may be going for National Honor Society or some of the other organizations that require the student to show some examples of their work, that portfolio is a great tool, I think, for them to have. And if it's work that's captured over the years automatically, it's not a great deal of work that needs to be done at one time because it's already there. The work's been done for them if they've used it over the years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also thought that a portfolio is a good idea for teachers to have access to the student portfolio, certainly for the point that you mentioned about being able to use it as a learning opportunity for the student or to provide some instruction, but also from a practical point of view, where I don't know about your school and how things are done anymore, but there used to be, the student folder that was passed from one teacher to the next from year to year with a sample of the students' writing and all this other stuff. If you could have that in a digital portfolio that the next year's teacher can just go back and look at, you're cutting down on paper and all sorts of things, and the teacher would know automatically what the student's capable of and what they've accomplished already.
I agree.
Okay. So now, you've been a mentor to a lot of people. Can you tell us about a time that you mentored an innovator and witnessed their idea come to life?
Sure. I actually would say it was a teacher. And one of her ideas was to allow students to do a project that wasn't the typical project. So we all know the trifold boards for science fairs
Sure.
or the poster all about me. So one of the projects we did, there's two different ones that this teacher did that I was incredibly impressed with, that they used Canva to create an Instagram account, not like a true account, but like a mimicked account of posts and different things for Women's History Month. And they had the account banners, and one was Serena Williams as the individual, the student research, and they had their picture, and they had to make some posts and some fun posts, so that not only were they talking about historical sense of oh, I won Wimbledon, and shared that post, and then did a hashtag, better than my sister. And it was just a really great way to, it wasn't a 5-paragraph essay. It wasn't a diorama. It wasn't a trifold board. It brought their students' learning to life. And then when we did last year, was, again, we're researching historical figures, and it was like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Again, this was in elementary school, and it wasn't like, I want to be a pilot, and this is why, is that the students wrote about their passion and then took their own image and did an AI generated image of themselves in the year that they were working. So they had pictures of a 24-year-old professional soccer player, and then wrote the bio for the program that was for the team. Or we had one was a preacher, and it had this individual, as it looked more like a 30-year-old image of this student who was who's in 5th grade, but then wrote a bio like it was in the newspaper of welcoming our new pastor, Pastor James, and would write that up. So it was taking a very typical historical kind of lesson of like All About Me, or what do you want to do when you grow up, or Women's History Month, and adding that little bit of innovation through some of our current programs. And man, the students loved it, and they were so engaged to do the work.
That's a really cool way to do it, because it does. It really draws the students in and engages them more than just your traditional project.
Sure.
I don't know if you just noticed I looked at my watch. I want to be clear. I wasn't looking at my watch to be rude. We were about 30 minutes in before the term AI was used, which is always impressive to me, okay? Because normally that's front and center on everybody's mind of, what the technology is and so forth. So having said that, I am going to ask you this question, and it's fine if that's part of your answer. Looking ahead, what's one area of education that you think is ripe for a major innovative breakthrough in the next 5 years?
Yeah, and again, something I don't talk a lot about AI as a solo entity. I talk about it through projects, and
Right.
It's not because I don't know enough about it. There's other people out there who are more, versed in the topic. So it's not because I talk a lot about the thinking. I talk a lot about leadership. I talk a lot about collaboration, and sure, AI is a piece of that. And I think as we look ahead, one area that is ripe for innovation is students leading learning, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's through the use of AI, maybe that's through the use of video, maybe it's them teaching classes, maybe it's them creating their own YouTube channels. I think, again, this is my lens on it, it's not a thing. And where we are ripe for innovation is looking at the instructional practices that we are asking of our staff. And if we're still standing up in front of classrooms and delivering content in 5 years, we're in major trouble as a profession. Is that the shift is around the instructional practices and the thinking of what is learning. Even I don't know. I mean, I just met you, but I bet if I asked you, how have you figured out some things that you weren't able to do as a homeowner or as a podcaster, you'd say, oh, I looked it up on YouTube. Well, why are we not allowing our students to do the same thing? And
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I think that's where the breakthrough is for the next 5 years. Get out of the way and set the finish line. What I mean by that is set where you want students to be at the end of their learning journey and backwards map it for them to get there. Because for me, I'm not an artist, but there's some amazing artists. Why are we not allowing them to sketch note their work, sketch note their assignments? I'm not a musician, but if someone could write a song and perform it about health and fitness, that's better than that student who's not a great writer writing a 5-paragraph essay. And for me, that, and again, that's just a core belief of mine, because in school I had I wasn't a great writer, and my professors in college allowed me to do presentations, allowed me to do different things to show my knowledge. And I've never forgotten that, because I'm where I'm at because of their trust and faith and trying something different. And I see that for students, and that for me in the next 5 years, schools and districts that make that shift in education and learning. And it's not differentiation, and it's not, that's, people overuse that term. It's allowing students to showcase their work and transfer learning in the way that showcases their knowledge.
I agree completely with that, the concept there. So tell me what's next for you. What do you have coming up?
Oh, I have a few different things coming up. I do a lot of work with Tech and Learning Leader. I do a lot of work with RTM. And for me, it's continuing to support our authors. We have 4 books coming out in the spring. And individually, I have a few keynote opportunities coming up, both in one in DC, one in Tennessee. So I'm looking forward to those opportunities.
Well, that's all very exciting. But tell me, how can we find you? So where can we find your podcast? Sure. Where can we find your website?
So one of the things I've done, going back to one of your earlier question about oversaturating the field in social media, I think if you go to my website, xfactor.link, it has the podcast. It has, my Twitter handle at Matthew X Joseph. It has articles. It has books. I think that's the best central point for individuals. www.xfactor.link. It brings you to the website, and from there, you can choose where you want to go next. And I think my email is on there, but if something you're interested in connecting with me, it's, drmatthewxjoseph@gmail.com. So between the website and my email is the best way to connect with me.
Okay, well, we'll be sure to get all of that information in the show notes when we post this.
Great.
We'll put this on YouTube and also the usual places for the audio podcast, Spotify, Apple, and so forth. Listen, Dr. Joseph, I really had a great time with you today.
Thanks, Scott.
It's been a wonderful conversation, and I really do appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, so thank you for spending some time with us today.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
That's a wrap on this episode of Innovator Insights. A huge thanks to Dr. Matthew Joseph for joining us and sharing his experience and insights. If you enjoyed today's conversation, head over to innovatorinsights.io, where you can find more episodes and subscribe to our mailing list for the latest in technology and innovation. And if you found this discussion valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.